Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I will present our invitees. So the first lecture will be by Jean-Marc Chouvel from Université Sorbonne Paris 4. Jean-Marc est musicologue. Jean-Marc is musicologist and composer, clarinetist, and engineer. So his approach is very interesting because he mixes out this field of thought, and his mainly work is about the relation and ways of representation to represent music, the representation of the music as an analysis. So he will talk about it. After that, I will present everybody because it's more easy, it's easy. Then after we have Tatiana Catanzaro, which also a composer and uses analysis as a tool to compose and to sync music, and not analysis to be only analysis. And she will talk about a new composition she's working on, transposing visual images to composition and transforming this visual image in an algorithm and so on. And after we'll have José Henrique Padovani, which is also a composer, and we'll talk about one of his compositions and about approaches of composition and computer music and analysis, computer-aided analysis. And I will close our lecture with a very brief demonstration, also comprehending this question, this relation between musical analysis and composition, and mainly what I think everything Denise Garcia said in this morning will be repeated here. The musical analysis, the point of view of the composers, it's very specific. So we'll start with Jean-Marc Chouvel. Jean-Marc, c'est à toi.
Okay, thanks a lot. I must say I have a very ambiguous relation as a composer with computer science. In French, we say informatique. As I was saying, it's a combination of information and automatic. And of course, automatic is not something I'm very keen on while I am composing. In fact, what perhaps I could speak about what I learned from computer science as a composer. Because I, of course, learned computer science in a time where computers were not at all like that. You know, you needed a room to have a computer, and a room with a specific electric plants and things like that. So I learned also computer science with a very low level, at a very low level. So seeing what they call machine language, something that nobody is using anymore, except very specific engineering. So for me, coming into the world of music was a little bit escaping the world of computer science, to be honest. But when you learn something, there is always something left. You know, I think as I have this all this knowledge as a physicist, because I also studied physics. It provides me some models, some thinking models. And even if I want to avoid them, they remain. I don't know if it's for the best or for the worst. It's another option. But they remain. I mean, I have no trouble using computer while I'm composing if I need it. It's not, you know, it's not an ideological point of view at all. If I need something, I use it. No. And in this way, computer for me is really a tool that I can grab what I need, and I can leave also what I do not need. I think it's important to be clear with that point, because in fact sometimes I feel that there is a kind of not obligation, but really a very big impulsion to make music with computer as being how to say a kind of proof of modernity, a proof of being up to date, you know. So I think that computer science deserves something better than that, in fact, because it's a wonderful tool. You can do with that things that were unaffordable before, and what's the most important for me is the way it broadens my imagination. Yet, because it allows me to go into spaces, into way of thinking music I would never have been without this kind of thinking. Especially, for example, I worked a lot on harmony. Well, harmony is a very, very, very old matter, but in fact, we don't have a very precise physical theory of harmony, and when I get into that, it was imprescindible. It was impossible to avoid some kind of calculations that would have been impossible without computer science. So this is not really making composition, but it is preparing the universe in which you will compose. Especially, I'm very very interested in microintervals, and this world of microintervals, you know, is the combinatorial possibilities for quarter tones or sixth tones is really not infinite, of course, but really, really bigger than the one we use with chromatic scales. And even with chromatic scales, we have an enormous amount of possibilities. And of course, within those possibilities, you need a kind of map, what I called yesterday representation, but representation in a way you can find your way in what's happening there. There, I must admit, computer was very useful, because the kind of calculation that was implied by this research was impossible by hand. Just impossible. And even with I remember the kind of calculation I was doing for that at the beginning. It was not with that kind of computers. You put the calculation at the beginning of the night, and you have the result on the morning or next week. Sometimes happen the next week. Not too often, but sometimes happened. So just for getting some knowledge you couldn't have get just with your sensation. You always have to make this comparison in between what you get from the computer and what you get from your ears. And this is also something very important for me. I mean, of course, all these theoretical things, all these possibilities of making calculations, all these possibilities of getting into a more dedicated formalism, all those possibilities would be nothing if they are not immediately related to our sensation. So I mean, I sometimes have problems with letting the computer doing things. I'm not so keen on that. It's always very funny, always very interesting, always very... But I think we always need this this way of feedback, you know, from what's happening there and what's happening here. And this feedback perhaps is the most difficult theme we have to address now. I mean, this field of cognitive sciences and the way we can implement that into the computer and the way we can have a kind of modelization of our own way of thinking music, way of perceiving it. This will, to my opinion, will be in the future of computer science a very big problem. Perhaps I will just stop here. I don't know if we have time. I can perhaps show you a little thing about a program I told you yesterday, and just to don't know if I have the possibility of projecting. Wait a minute. This is computer science too. Always problems. Let's see. Okay, I want that. So this is okay. Now, I wanted to show you a little bit of well, okay. It doesn't work anymore. Okay. I don't know why. This is typical. It was working before I connect the things, and it's not working anymore, but it will do. Okay, it's a program called Hexachord. It was written by Louis Bigot, according to this kind of representation of the chord. And I'll show you the kind of real-time analysis it's able to do. And this, well, I don't know if it's analysis. It's representation, and the analysis you have to do it afterwards. But yet, the thing I want to point, showing you this program, is what's changing in our way of understanding music when you use this kind of tools. You know, so you can here choose any MIDI file well, perhaps I take the first one. It's EITAM. You just ask for, okay. We just ask for a specific structure, just the common one, and I ask him to play the music. But we need the sound. Why it doesn't work? Okay. It's very nice. That's the demo effect, you know. I've never seen that. I don't know. It's terrible. But it's typical of computer science, no? Yes. Okay, that's enough. What's happening there? You know, we have a very complex set of chords, and we are able to see what it's about. What are the relation? You know, it gives us a visualization of the kind of relations that are used here by EITAM. This program is very interesting because you can see it in different way. You have a trace mode that allows. Perhaps I will do it a little bit less rapid. You can change the tempo, and okay. So. So you see, in the trace mode, there is no more sound. I don't know why. You can see the progression, and you have a memory of what happened just after that. The program is dealing with the idea of compacity. Of course, this is a mathematical concept, and it's always, to my opinion, complicated to understand how you make the relation between a mathematical concept and something that could be, let's say, a neurological concept. But, of course, all this works also as a kind of metaphor. And we have to learn how to deal with those metaphors, you know. And I think that it's very interesting when it works. I'm sorry, but it's very typical, this. Okay.
May I?
I think it's better to have the three presentations, and after the presentation to have the questions, or do you want to make some question now? It's better to have everybody on. Okay.
Preciso. Uhum. Eu tenho. Can I take this? Eu tenho um. So, I was prepared to talk something about more technical that I wrote my thesis, in fact. But this morning, Stefan, he asked us to talk about our compositional view, about the analytical tools that we use to compose, and then I thought about to show you the something about a piece that I composed recently in 2018 that was commissioned by America Society, and that was premiered in September 2018 in New York by America Society. And it's a piece that's called Comme dans le cœur d'un tournesol, as the heart of a sunflower. And daisy. No, it's a sunflower. It's a sunflower. And the idea of the piece came to me because the constraint of the composition was that it was a piece commissioned by Disclavier, that's a piano, like a piano roll, and the proposition of the piece was to make some link with the work of the Colin Nancarrow. So that's someone very mathematical and who worked a lot with fractals and very, very highly structured composition. And that was really difficult to me because I'm the kind of composer that always put the hands inside the piano and grab the sound on there. And it was difficult to me to see how I could relate to this proposition. And so after a while, I was trying to understand, and the sunflower came to my mind because it will be a little not very prepared because I had this idea in the morning, but I came to the sunflower because it's a Fibonacci structure. So I thought, well, maybe I can relate to this because I really like organic things, like all my pieces about butterflies and the wind and things like that. And I could not just make some calculus and turn out something that I couldn't. Yeah. So I went to the sunflower and I discovered that it's related to something that's the Vogel's model. And the Vogel's model, I'm going to speak about the Vogel's model after. And then I find this video about a guy that's a German researcher that he discovered that if he put some sound on the water, the signal on the water would do some patterns. And then at some point, he begins to relate these patterns to nature of sound, the patterns in water and nature. And at some point, he relates this to the sunflower. So it's a little bit further down there. And there's just the image, but at the end of this video, he puts again the pattern with sound, the sound that makes it. And then I calculated the fundamental to see what kind of sound would make this pattern of sunflower in the water. And I had this C#2. So here is the the pattern. So my composition was based on the C#2. That was my fundamental, I guess. And after that, I came back to the sunflower, the sunflower and Fibonacci numbers and the Vogel model, etc. And another video that I'm going to show you. This is the Vogel's model. And it depends of the difference of the angle of each particle. It gives us this various patterns. So the sunflower, it's made by an angle of 137.5 degrees. That's the golden mean. So there's a little bit an explanation of this that says in fact the disposition of the central flowers made a regular motif in a spiral, and it's the suite of Fibonacci related by the golden mean. And down there there's the schema, the scheme. And what's really interesting about the sunflower is that it makes us these curves, and from it always obeys the Fibonacci ratio. So if for this sense there's 8, in the other sense it's going to be 13. So here's a model where one side is 21 and the other side is 34. And there's the angles of consecutive seeds with 137, that's the sunflower, 136, and 138. So it changes a lot. And then I found a website who simulated each seed, so I could see how the seed was disposed in the space by this angle of 137.5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's this. So here. One seed and then 2. I made a model with 112 seeds. Etc. And then etc. 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 And then at the end we're going to have this 112 seeds model. So I begin to think, how could I transpose this to music? And I couldn't. But I made some calculations, and then I took this ratio, 137.508 in fact, by 8 notes of this clavier, and then I get this number 33.6130, that I put here, and then I had this result. it's for me, when I had this result, I was really amazed because it looks like something that comes out and comes down, and it really seems like I was really amazed. And what I was more amazed, it was because when I began to make some experience. For example, I took the first seed and then the true 3 and the first seed again. So seeds for 3, 5, 8, 13. So the golden mean, and then the result was this. So with each 3, so 1, 4, 7, 10, etc. I had this result. No. Where is this? Where is this? No. I'm going to find it. I had this result, so it's an arpeggio that goes up. Then with 5, I had this result. No, it's not. It was not this. I had this result, so it's something that goes down. And then with 8, I had this result. 8, 8, 8, 8. Going up, and then with 13, I had this going down, and etc. So 3 up, 5 down, 8 up. I was really amazed, and even then I couldn't have any idea to compose the piece. And then I found finally how to compose the piece. It was when I find this poem. This poem that was written by a friend of mine, that's a pianist. She's called Lucia Servini, and she wrote this poem that says: Tu vois le chemin par où passent les enfants, les chiens, les sages. Tu entends à chaque moment le dur pas de l'arrogant et l'oscillant pas de l'indécis. Robuste face qui suit les bataillons de conquêtes passées, les rampées des seuls gens à un repas. La pluie te donne un fardeau presque insupportable, presque incroyable, qui s'imprègne dans ta chair et t'étente de tes propres couleurs. Par combien de Van Gogh devras-tu passer pour que ton existence soit pleine en être? Jour à jour, les fous te poursuivent, tournesol. Riche beauté qui t'empêche de n'être à l'aise. C'est les chauds soleils dont tu cherches, c'est la tendre douceur de l'aube que tu trouves. Et à ce moment-là, j'ai eu l'idée de la pièce. Et du coup, je vais montrer en anglais, la pièce. Allez, on va. Oh, you see the way, the path where goes the children, the dogs and the português. Allez, on va en português. Você vê o caminho por onde passam as crianças, os cachorros, os sábios. Você ouve a cada momento o passo duro do arrogante, o oscilante passo do indeciso. Robusta face que segue os batalhões das conquistas passadas. O romper, o subir das gentes sós para como é que chama? Para uma refeição. A chuva te dá um fardo quase insuportável, quase incrível, que se impregna na tua carne e te dá as cores das suas próprias cores, né? Por quantos Van Goghs deverá você passar para que sua existência seja plena, um ser? dia a dia os loucos te perseguem em torno do sol, girassol. Rica beleza que te impede de nascer à toa. O calor do sol que você procura, é a doce ternura do fim do dia que te encontra. É do alvorecer, é isso. Bom, dentro with this politics that we are facing now, I find some resonance in myself, and then I could how many times I have done. I'm just going to show you -4. I have -4 minutes. Okay, just to show you the score and how I thought about it, really briefly. Score. So, it's comme dans le cœur d'un tournesol, au cinématique 137,1508 degrés. This is to make a little joke with Colin and Carol. and then what I did was I took this group of notes, and then I thought that I wouldn't know the structure of it. I'd like to see the sunflower. And then what I did, I took little groups of notes, and I composed, and I began to compose the piece with these little groups of notes, but in a very freely way. And I put this kind of sun that's coming from, that's giving energy in the resonant part of the piece. So all the clavier, he makes like a path of sound that builds a harmony, but just holds this harmony, and it's kind of constructing the sonority of the piece by this resonance of the piano. So it's a resonance that goes all way along until the middle of the piece, and then at the middle of the piece, I begin to show the really structure in the piano, in the clavier. So it's something that is really tough to play. Really, just I think this machine can play it, and at this moment, the pianist is free to begin to show also how this themes that I made, this kind of motifs that I composed, how they are in fact the structure of the same structure of the sunflower. And I begin to salute this kind of objects to finally at this point down here show exactly one of the seeds, the fifth infected, the fifth row here, and then I just led them to hear the structure. That's this Fibonacci part, and after that I introduced the voice, because for me all this experience is so exasperating, and I don't have really a clue to what we are going on. So I introduced this breath of my organic part. I introduced this breath into the composition, and this breath began to grow and grow and grow and grow until it collapses into a really huge scream. And she screams inside the piano, so the final resonance is the resonance of the voice of the pianist. And that's it.
Thank you, Tatiana. So, Padovan.
Thank you. Well, Wait a minute. Eu preciso dessa parte. Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with this great table of composers and researchers. I'm really happy to be here. And well, my talk, Stefan suggested today to us to talk about our pieces, but I had prepared something else, and so I will not talk about my pieces and my composition. And I'm sorry. Well, what I would like to talk about is about these implications of technology in composition and analysis, but in a more critical or epistemological, ethical, political way. I don't know how to say that. So, in the last years, we have all these kind of things to create music, to analyze music. My students that are here from Unicamp or FMG know how I try to use all those things in different projects. But what concerns me today is not. Oh well, and as we have all these tools, we have also new practices using them and developing these tools and applying those tools. And we have also structured new classes and curricula and disciplines to deal with those tools. And it's not easy because in composition, for instance, we usually have harmony, counterpoint, analysis, and orchestration. In composition, it's enough. And the rest is the rest. And it is not always easy to include those new technologies in these old practices or old ways to say where one thing begins and other where we study harmony and counterpoint and orchestration. But you don't do those things together unless in the composition. But I mean, you need to organize those fields of those practices in the curricula. And I see this tendency, talking to colleagues and also to students, that many people share this view that there is always something that you have not learned and mastered yet. So, I need to learn pure data, I need to learn open music, I need to learn Python, and this is some kind of thing that I would like to talk today, that is this sense that we are like in a, I made this metaphor today, that we are running our best in a technological treadmill of planned obsolescence. Next week, everything that you learn is not in the state of the art. Please study again. There's this beautiful count of Calvino in the Invisible Cities. One of the cities, people throw everything away every night and need to buy again everything the next morning. So I think that we are in this kind of situation with technology in our practices. And this is sort of this iPhoneization of our creative and technical tools. There will be always a new, very high-tech tool, but as a final user or consumer, you are compelled to buy it, even if you don't know what you do with it, and you can't elaborate it by yourself, and you probably can't afford it. And, well, and in this context, so I would like to take a few steps back and see this panorama, and think about this relationship we have with technology and technical objects. Not so much thinking about these new trends, what we will do next year about with those new tools. We will compose or analyze with deep learning and whatever. And also I don't want to try to make some kind of futurology of what we will be doing in 5 years, or what we will be discussing about composition and analysis with technology in the next EITAM, for example. So, yes, I would like to think about how we understand our relationship with those tools, and what we propagate. Especially, I think about my profession much more as a professor than as a composer or as an what I do every week is to go to a class and to teach students. And what concerns me is what we propagate in terms of attitudes and ideologies to our students when dealing with that. Well, I will jump this. So, the first thing what this title of this table made me to think what we understand by computer. And it's a little bit stupid, maybe as a question, but for me it's important because it's not I mean, I'm not thinking so much in the Turing's machine. I'm thinking about what is this thing as a cultural and as a mediator of our way to think and to create and to analyze music. So if it is a tool, this is one possible answer. It is a tool. But which concept of tool? So there is this concept of tool that I don't like, personally, by Heidegger in Being and Time, where he says that the instrument is he's thinking about instruments that you manipulate with hands, not the technological machines that he talks about in the question of the technique, the Frage zur Technik. The instrument is always something for something, zu etwas, to do something. It's a pragmatic view. And this second part is, for me, terrible, that manifests itself only when it becomes defective or when it breaks. He says that the artisan, the man someone that is using a tool, only sees the tool when it breaks. And it's really strange for me, because I think in an artist, he's always thinking about his tool, which is the best pencil, which is the best technique, and it's not something invisible that you forget. And I prefer this notion that comes from Leroy-Gourin, Simondon, and Bernard Stiegler, that if it is a tool, it is a prosthetic tool. It may extend your senses and your perception and your actions. It may transform, and it may isolate you from what you are dealing. Think about someone that is dealing with fire. He will not put the hand, he will use a stick or something. And, well, but even from this perspective, how can such a tool be so malleable and abstract as a computer? Because it's a tool that you can use to create a text. It's a tool that you can create a physical formula. You can simulate meteorological systems, I don't know. And so it resembles a mirror, or maybe a chameleon. It's something that reflects yourself, what you are, what you want to do. It's not a stable tool. It changes every time. And how to master a tool, an instrument that gets updated and changes so much? That's a question for me. Well, you see, it's not easy to master. Well, and sorry the typos here, but maybe it would be better to think it about something between the machine and workshop. And Simondon has some ideas regarding this, and I will address this. So, it's a place where you find gears, mechanisms, assemblages, and mechanisms that dynamically concretize and materialize human thoughts and gestures. And then Simondon has this thing that maybe it's better than me explaining. And I'm sorry, eventually, any error in the translation, my English is not perfect. So, the machine is a being that works. Its mechanisms embody a current dynamism that once existed in thought, which was thought. The dynamism of thought as an invention has turned to be functional forms. Conversely, the machine, while operating, undergoes and produces several variations around the fundamental rhythms of its operation, as they result from its definite forms. These variations are significant, and they are significant in relation to an operating archetype that is that of thinking the process of invention. It is necessary to have invented or reinvented the machine so that the variations of its operations become information. What's interesting, maybe it's not easy to take the point fast here, but it's this image that you open the machine and you see the gears, and when you see the gears, you are seeing also a way to think and to act and to create things that are deployed there. So the gears are not only gears, they are someone else's way to think and to act in the world. And I like very much this image. And then from this comes something that is my view of the relationship between music analysis, composition in a certain way, and mechanology, that is this field that Simondon and also I think Lalit before him, and they taught as mechanology as the study of the technical objects. Technology would be the study of technical parts, and mechanology would be the technical being, the technical object as a whole. And this idea that one needs to disassemble or assemble gears, procedures, dynamical processes to be able to understand the operating mechanisms involved. It may be a piece, it may be a machine, it may be a program, it may be an algorithm. And the thing is, you don't really create a dialogue with the human thought and the gestures the human gestures that are deployed in these gears before doing this process to deconstruct and reconstruct, to disassemble and reassemble, even abstractly. Well, and I come to the end. So this invites us to think about music and technical objects as something that is dynamical. The gears, they need to move to operate. They are not something statical that you can make frames like photographs, but it's the movement that is the gesture or the thought that is there. And to understand this, we need to surpass some schemes that are hylomorphical, I will talk about this briefly, or statical. Well, and this has to me, when I read this, I will show the passage from Simondon, the first time, it has consequences that are very important to me because they have a political or ethical or sociological side that I never thought before. Well, and so hylomorphism is this idea that you have matter and form, and as a magic trick, you have a technical object in the end. And what Simondon says, that for me it's really interesting, that is the operation that imposes a form on a passive and indeterminate matter is not only an operation abstractly considered by the viewer who sees that what enters in the workshop and what comes out of it without knowing anything about the elaboration itself. It is essentially the operation commanded by the free man and performed by the slave. The free man chooses the matter undetermined simply because it is sufficient to designate it generically by the name of substance, without seeing it, without manipulating it, without preparing it. The object will be made of wood, iron, earth. I will jump to the end, the last phrase. The distinction between form and matter, between soul and body, reflects a city that contains citizens as opposed to slaves. So it was really surprising me when I read this for the first time. And I will conclude. I'm sorry, I have a problem here. But my final questions are, I will be more Socratic than conclusive, I'm sorry. But how to disassemble and reassemble or invent and reinvent increasingly complex processes as we are dealing today in analysis and creation situations in which computers and new technical objects play key roles. How can we practically replace these hylomorphic schemes, these statical schemes, and with approaches that have that address these objects archaeologically or mechanologically? And the last thing, how to embody the many consequences of these considerations into creative, analytical, and pedagogical activities, especially in this society of consumption context that we live today. And I think that without perceiving it, you are dealing in our creative and analytical practices as consumers too, as people that go to the mall to buy things. And maybe we should try to invent a new way to deal with this very oppressive context, to reinvent our way, our techniques, our tools, but also our way to deal with these highly industrial tools. So it is it.
Thank you. I will show a very fast. Click aqui. It's a very fast presentation. Maybe in relation with the presentation of Padovani. There are some questions about analysis, but I will not talk about it because we don't have time. But it's very important to think analysis is a kind of fabulation. And working with computer and analysis, we are increasing maybe our possibilities of fabulation. In what we fabulate relations, and computers maybe can help us to fabulate relation. So here, it's not important that. Here we have one score of Brahms, and one analysis I did. A very simple analysis of the melodic line of Intermezzo 119 of Brahms, transforming the arpeggios in a kind of cascades. Okay, it's a visual analysis with a performative analysis, something I feel playing piano and listening to Brahms. And I observed some very general and aspects in the surface of the music, not inside the structure of the music, but I considered that. So here is the path of the analysis. So the first path is over a paper and working as any ordinary analytical. But the main question is how to transform data in analysis. Because 19% of we call analysis is not more than having more data about a music, but not exactly the analysis of the data. So here I have the first implementation, a computer implementation in Max MSP, and randomizing Brahms intervals because I found it possible in Brahms, and randomizing the cycle of intervals because it was possible in Brahms. So I used the computer to expand this idea. And after that, I read a letter from Clara Schumann, from Brahms to Clara Schumann, where he says, every bar and every note must sound like a ritardando. So I worked on it. So computer here is a kind of tool of experimentation and not a tool of implementation. And I will show you the result. I hope there are sound. Okay. Okay, computer problems. Huh? Mm-hmm. I hope the video can explain how the analysis works. Se for direto lá, quebra.
Não tem dentro.
My idea was just to show something sounding. Volta lá pro começo.
Oh, capeta.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Não sei de onde é aqui. Here I have the implementation, which I work a lot of time experimenting in a Discavia, my algorithm. Changing intervals and using computer for experimentation. And here is a piece of music I wrote to piano solo after all this experimentation, and no more using computer, but using paper and pen and a piano. Okay. So it's just to close and to start questions. If someone have a question, I think out of uns 15 minutos, né? Não? Tá. Então, if someone have alguém tem alguma questão a fazer a mesa? If you don't have question, I have one very simple question, and someone can answer to Adolfo.
São 3 diferentes posições sobre o uso de computadores. Eu vou me ater a uma pergunta para o professor Padovani. É o seguinte, eu não entendi direito qual a sua posição do computador dentro da arte da composição. E a minha pergunta vai no seguinte sentido, porque me parece que qualquer produto tecnológico, ou mesmo qualquer tecnologia humana, ela é neutra. Pode ser usada por qualquer pessoa, por qualquer indivíduo em qualquer nação que tenha acesso a essa tecnologia. Então, por que você dá tanta ênfase a maneiras de ver o computador sociologicamente ou politicamente, ou coisas desse tipo, se parece ser um objeto tão neutro como o carro, a roda, outras coisas assim? É uma provocação, viu? Desculpe.
Okay. Bom, maybe I'll answer in English in respect to but the question I will summarize. No? Ah. Okay, I don't agree with you that it's a neutral tool, because I don't think that there are neutral tools. I think that tools are anthropological tools from a culture, from a context, and so I don't think they are neutral tools. It is true that they are very spread, because we are in a world that they are spread like guns are spread, like war is spread. I mean, this doesn't mean that the computer or those tools are universal. They are humans bring these tools to somewhere. So that's my first objection, maybe. But by the other side, I think that when those things come to certain places, people start to deal with them. And so you have the electric guitar that began in the USA, and if you go to Salvador, people you use this in another way, and I think that's like that in many places. So there is an appropriation, a cultural integration, and so that's maybe a very short answer, but the longer one we can talk about later. But I think that it's especially important to think about this political side and this ethical side, especially because it seems to be neutral. It seems to be just a tool. And from this perspective, from Simondon's perspective, I like it very much. I'm not a Simondonian, but I like it very much. This specific point of view that a technical tool is a cultural artifact, and you don't properly understand a cultural artifact if you don't read it like a book. A book is a cultural artifact, and we don't have this attitude towards books. It's just a bunch of neutral paper. There are ideas there. There are cultural values, and that's my position.
Yes, I just wanted to add one point to that. I think we have two things with computer, in fact. And perhaps nowadays it's something very very important to think about it. One, I should call it synthesis, and the other one captation. And this opposition in between synthesis and captation, you can find it at a lot of levels of our way of using computer science. It was already the well-known opposition making sounds in electroacoustic music, you know. But I think you can get exactly the same thing with behaviors, not only the sound, but the what I would call the behaviors, the way you think. There are what you can produce and what you can grab from some reality. And I think computer does not deliver us from a way of thinking this thing. And it's always functioning when we are composing, when we are making art. I think it's a broader problem than only composition.
Is there some other question? We can continue talking about this question, about neutrality. Because about computer we have a lot of stories very bizarre stories. The first one is the Hollerith model of the 19th century, ends of 19th century. Hollerith model was used to find Jews in Germany. In Brazil we have the Hollerith. In the Hollerith you have all the description of the family, and this model of Hollerith is the basis for IBM computer. The second question is, when computing the atomic bomb, the best way to compute atomic bomb was using class theory. So to the IBM it was developed a lot of programming which Milton Babbitt used after in pitch class set theory. So we have a really great connection between war and dead and computer. And there are another problem, that computer is the instrument of the control society as proposed by Foucault and Deleuze. Like we have the writing as the great tool of the disciplinary society. So machines are not neutral, are always related to a kind of power. Okay, musicians use machine as they want, but the problem is not how Bach used the piano or the clavecin. It is how medium people and general ordinary people use that. So a lot of childs thinking they are doing music with apps in the computer, and they are doing nothing. They are doing only trash. They are using. So it's very important, this question Padovani said, and I think he can speak a little bit more, the difference between users and creative people. It's very different. Apps are promoting users and not creative people. This is the problem of non-neutrality. Okay, we in the university, we use in a kind of a creative way, but ordinary and the medium people use as only as a user. And we have a lot of people thinking they are doing art, but it's very bizarre. When we went to the sortie de cours de l'EITAM, we listened to the same music 10 or 25 times, because computer are doing always the same music, and there are a kind of idea inside computer. It was a kind of a way to programming, and it is a way of thinking. It's not naive. Huh?
Where does it come from, what we want? Where does it come from? And I think one of the main issues is freedom. Keeping freedom for ourselves with the machine. It will be
Keeping this conscience of the...
I have a question for one of you three. Computer give us a lot of data. And you have so much data. There are notes in music and fingers to play. So if you analyze all the data of Amazonia, you have Amazonia again. So how to understand the analysis when you have a so large amount of data?
Thank you. I think I will answer with a kind of sentence, a little bit apart, but it really answers your question. I think we have more things than reason to do something. So it's the real value is the reason we have, and not the things we have.
you want me to comment this
And to close.
and to close this? So you know that I'm a very intuitively composer, totally different from the musicologist part that's right meticulous. But I guess that there's no technology that really comes alive if it not bumps into an idea of someone. So what makes me choose some notes or not, some rows or not other data, it's the poetry. It's the poetry behind it. It's when I find Lucia Servini, and she guided me to choose the patterns that fit the best inside my head.
Maybe Servini is the way to disassemble and reassemble the gears of the machine.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I think we don't have any time, so thank everybody to be here, and thank everyone in the table.